Hello and welcome everyone back to
Not fighting.
I think they know who we are, but I'm Tyler Bishop.
And I'm Jena Bishop.
I feel like it's like one of those things where it's like, do you remember in like elementary school when you had to like introduce yourself and you're like, I'm Eric Schmidt or whatever?
It's weird that you would say that your name was Eric Schmidt.
There wasn't an Eric Schmidt in my class or anything like that. I mean, there wasn't. It sounds like I'm being grilled. I feel like you're suspicious of me. It's like there definitely wasn't, and it's like that guy winds up dead, and it's like, well, now he's wanted for questioning because obviously he lied about even knowing that the guy existed when he did.
You're going off on a tangent now.
Yeah. Don't look at me like I'm crazy. We were telling somebody the other day or last night, if you're somebody that says like I'm not crazy, there's no better way to sound crazy.
Yeah, it makes you seem guilty of being crazy.
Yeah, or like only a crazy person would say that. Why are they, got a chip on their shoulder about being crazy?
Yep, it's true. Something's up.
You know something's up, and you know something's up with this podcast because you know that we're probably not always going to have these perfect segues. I think our last podcast was like really good in that sense because we transitioned beautifully from like orcas to MMA to leg locks and their use in jiu-jitsu. I felt like all those things were just like really seamless together.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say to you right now. You're just like rambling on like
I like the orca part of our last podcast. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is a different podcast. This is a different day, and we're going to talk about new things.
I'm trying to sell people on going back and listen to previous podcasts.
I mean, of course.
Hashtag marketing, hashtag professional, hashtag blessed. But one of the things that we were talking about, speaking of like being able to do marketing and jiu-jitsu, beautiful transition. We were talking a little bit about like the benefit of like being cross-disciplined or even cross-training in general, and that was something that we thought I think it's probably never more like relevant than it is now, where you're seeing like we talked about the last time, like this divergence in like gi and no gi jiu-jitsu. And it's like, why not train like a little wrestling or a little judo or a lot of these other martial arts and things like that?
Yeah, I mean it's becoming like really important and like kind of almost necessary to just like kind of like broaden your horizons and train, different disciplines. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's necessary, but I think it's a good thing to like branch out and especially, I don't know, for me, I don't think that they're all that different, but it strengthens like your game always.
So one thing that I used to always I think this, but you're like going through it now is you're training like some Muay Thai and some stand up and things like that too. And stand up meaning like, like striking martial arts. Do you think that your grappling benefits at all? Or do you think that there's something like that you get as a martial artist that helps you by training in, like grappling is its own thing. We can kind of divide up the grappling disciplines or whatever. But do you think that you learn things by training like Muay Thai or like kickboxing or something like that?
I mean, learn what things?
I guess learn something that would help aid you maybe as a grappler. I mean, obviously it's going to aid you in fighting from a striking perspective, but I guess what I used to take away was that it gave you a really better understanding of timing and space.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that is important, but I don't think it's important for grappling as much. I really don't think that there's like a good like it's more for fighting or self-defense, like knowing those kinds of things. So like if you're doing jiu-jitsu just for self-defense purposes, like it is good to train a little bit of striking and to kind of know that, because you kind of like figure out your ranges, and then you also know like realize like when somebody can hit you, like like it's very different. And then training your jiu-jitsu within like an MMA like thing, or for me I'm just thinking like, okay, it doesn't have to be MMA, you don't have to be fighting, but like if you're fighting for your life and somebody is trying to hit you, and like there's a lot of things that like you're not trying to like keep somebody on the ground. You're not trying to do jujitsu with them. You're trying to get away, you know? And I think like the training, like, that's kind of been like a good like understanding for me. And transition is just understanding like I'm not trying to like I don't want to be on my back and like even though I know my guard's good and I could choke somebody and I could submit somebody from my back, that's fine. But it's like I also am susceptible to taking damage from that position.
Yeah.
So it's better to be on top or just to get up and get away. And so I think those things is like you start to think about from like really just purely self-defense.
Yeah.
Not in the I don't think it's relevant to the sport of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and that, I mean, the being in the guard thing, it's like if the rules are like traditional jiu-jitsu rules, then it kind of makes sense that you would want to be like on your back or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like if you ask anybody that's a jiu-jitsu fighter, like, do you want to be fighting somebody and do you want to start on your back? I mean, if the person doesn't know anything, yeah, you might say yeah, but like realistically, no, it's not a great position to start in. You'd prefer to be someplace else, right?
I mean, wait, if I'm talking about just jiu-jitsu?
No, like an actual fight.
Oh,
like,
an actual fight. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's an actual
I almost
fight,
said no rules, but I'm like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what connotation that gets, but
yeah.
essentially, like if you're in a fight and there's a situation where you're on your back or something like that, I mean, I just don't think that that's the one you want to pick necessarily.
No, if you're in a fight, but if you're in a tournament, most people are going to choose to, you know, I mean, or not most people, but a lot of people I think prefer to play guard, and so they're going to be like, yeah, like if I could start in the close guard, like that's like optimal for me. You know? But if you're in a fight where somebody can punch you, it's not necessarily my choice.
But I think the thing that I think about with cross training and where like and this like falls into the spectrum of like why Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in a lot of ways got very, I think it sort of got a little bit isolated in a negative way here recently. But it's like, you know, the old Bruce Lee philosophy of like Jeet Kune Do, like, oh, just learn the stuff that works and throw away the stuff that doesn't. It's like, you know, I agree that you should train judo, wrestling. Like these are the best ways to like develop your abilities as a martial artist. Even if you're a grappler, like it benefits you to train all three potentially in their own. But like at what point do you stop trying to like, or like what point do you know if something's working or not, you know? Like how do you know that something's practical? And that's the thing that jiu-jitsu brings, I feel like, which is like you practice.
You get to practice and like see every day if it's practical, you know?
Yeah. But I guess you don't always get that in every martial art. So how do you know like what stuff you should be training, what stuff you shouldn't? Like, because, you know, like cross training, kickboxing, Muay Thai, like unless you're going to basically spar MMA, like how do you know like what stuff is like
which like discipline of striking is like the best or like philosophy is best. And I think that all depends on you as a fighter and your style, like the kind of thing that your body, your skill set, which one is like best for you. But I think that, yeah, like unless you're sparring and like unless you're like actually getting to practice it against people like for real, then it's not really like, it's hard to know if it's working or not, you know? For me, it's funny because it like just like getting back into striking. And when I first started, I was doing like kickboxing, but I stopped doing it because it's like it turned into a cardio kickboxing class, which is what I feel like a lot of people like do. Even if you're learning like a striking discipline, there's not many people. It doesn't appeal to the masses to actually spar and get hit in the face and like kicked and like punch for real.
And like why would it?
Yeah,
you know?
because
I would
nobody
never try
wants to get
somebody
hit.
to do that.
No, but you know, unless you're doing that, like you're just hitting pads. Like you're just doing a good workout. And I don't know. I mean, yes, you're going to get better at like throwing that like technically, but unless you have the resistance of it, it's like drilling in class with jiu-jitsu. It's like I could drill this move over and over again and I could have it drilled down perfectly. But then you throw in the fact that my opponent's going to do something different than like the reaction I was getting in drilling. And it's like, okay, now it doesn't work, you know? And so it's like you need the sparring aspect to actually like kind of like workshop it, like
I
figure
love the
out the
term
kinks.
workshop it.
I think I talk to you too much. Like I'm around him and it's all his like work terms and stuff like that. But it's like you need to like kind of figure out like
There's a
is
nice
it
synergy between the half guard and the De La Hiva. There's a nice partnership there.
But you gotta like, try it
Grab the
to
wrist. Make sure you seal that agreement. Get him locked into a 1-year contract. No, I'm with you. I think I think you bring up a really good point about like the I guess the efficacy of the different techniques and the martial arts and stuff, and like being able to practice. But we were talking about this as we were walking the dogs today. But where do you get to that point where we both think it's really important to cross train jiu-jitsu gym so you get exposed to different perspectives. But like in jiu-jitsu, it's very easy to say like, well, this move works for me, but it doesn't work for you, because there is a certain part of that that's true, right? But like when you're first learning, like how do you know when something doesn't work? It's because like, oh, well, I'm going to keep this or not keep this because this works, doesn't work. Whenever it's like, yeah, it's just because you don't really understand it yet, even though you probably think you do.
Yeah, and I think that's like it's a trap you don't want to fall into for sure. Like just being like this isn't gonna work for me, like and throwing it away right away because like you didn't have success with something right away, and you're like this just isn't for me. I think there's certain like once you get to a certain point, you'll be like this fits into my game or it doesn't fit into my game, which is different than this move will work for me or not.
That's a great point.
And then you'll also know like your body style and like different things that will like work good and not and like for you and not like so good for you and not
No, but I know what you're saying. Like you brought up a really good point about like something that works inside your game versus something that doesn't work. And I think that's the point at which I think that people can fall in this trap where it's like, oh, I don't think this move works very good because X, Y, and Z, or like it doesn't work good for me because whatever. It's like, no, you should be able to make the move work. Like there's no moves in jiu-jitsu that I can't do to somebody like as a black belt. If I'm rolling with like a blue belt, a purple belt or something like that, like I should be able to like force those techniques and like make them still work, even if it's not part of quote unquote my game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you understand the technique and you're just like, yeah, it just doesn't fit into what I do, I got to let the person in a half guard here. And that's not my best position. Like, yeah, makes sense. Like you can throw that away and say like, that's not like a great fit for me. But I think that there's that danger there in jiu-jitsu to be able to say like, well, this technique doesn't work, or it's outdated, or, whatever.
Yeah. I think that, you just have to be, I don't know I think a lot of times it's the ego that gets in the way of that, like deciding like if this move is going to work or not, because like if it's not working right away. But I will say that there's a lot of times where you might just not have the ability to understand that technique at that moment in your like jiu-jitsu career or like journey, whatever you want to call it. And there's so many times that I have learned something, I've thought it was really cool, but I'm like, yeah, I just don't think it's going to work for me, like that kind of thing. But then later, like I've developed more, I've become better, I've like done, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I remember learning this, and now I understand like the concept better, and I can put it into my game, or I can like actually execute it better. And so maybe it's just you weren't in the right place to like learn that.
Well,
I don't know.
It's really funny because I told you, I've probably told everybody about it this week because I'm just happy about it. But like earlier
your fireman's carry.
Yeah, so it is my fireman's carry. So like I've never do fireman's carry. It's never been a throw I really do at all. But I've learned it a billion times, and it wasn't until
I probably drilled it a billion times too.
Yeah, and so it wasn't till recently till you were working with it, and you were showing me kind of the steps that you'd been working on with J-Flow. Justin Flores, shout out Justin Flores, jflowacademy.com.
Yeah.
But what's your promo code?
Jena Bishop.
Promo code Jena Bishop. But yeah, I think you were kind of drilling it one day, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I just like logged in the back of my mind, and then we were just doing like some 2-minute drills. We were just doing stand up only, trying to work takedowns and stuff like that in class, and just kind of out of nowhere, I was just like kind of timed it right, and I was like, got the person to step. And I kind of remembered that part, and I was just like, oh, great. Boom. Fireman's carry. And I was like, that was a beautiful fireman's carry. I haven't done that in forever. and I've been training jiu-jitsu 13 years, probably learned fireman's carry first year doing jiu-jitsu. And like that's now I feel like, okay, I kind of get it.
Yeah. I think that was like the omoplata for me. That's something that I think you learn like right away. Like you learn it like
Yeah.
early on in your career, but I don't think like there's so many like little details into finishing it and like keeping it and executing it that I think it was like maybe when I got a purple belt that I actually started understanding, and then maybe when I got a black belt that I was like for real pulling it off.
Yeah. I trained with the other day I was training with somebody, and I cross collar choked them from mount. And he was an older brown belt, and one of the things he said afterwards, he's like, only Professor Johnny's the only other person that chokes me from mount. And it made me feel good because Johnny Faria is super, super technical, really tough black belt, but also been doing jiu-jitsu forever. And to me, the cross collar choke from mount is like, the classic trope of saying, first move you learn, last one you master. But like you and I talked about it recently, it's like when you choke somebody from mount, it's like the ultimate, like for me, it's like should be worth extra. It's like, it's worth 2 submissions.
Yes. I got you twice for that one.
Because it's like such a, I guess
it's like the first thing you learn to defend.
Yeah. I guess that's part of the reason why.
Yeah.
And you achieve like one of the most dominant positions. You get into mount, that cross collar choke, and there's just so many details that you have to get right to like make it work. And so, it's actually something that I work on quite a bit. And I think that that's what, when you talk about somebody that's like a master or whatever, like that's what they do is like, me mentioning like just now, I finally am kind of starting to think I understand the fireman's carry. 13 years into grappling, you know what I mean? It's like, when I think of people that are masters.
And granted, you're not like training stand up all the time, but still.
For sure. But it's one of those things we were talking about cross training where it's like grappling, not like jujitsu. Grappling. It's like you should be able to do fireman's carries, to be like a great grappler.
Well, I think, I mean, like that's, I think why ADCC is so popular and such a cool event is because it's a grappling tournament. It's not jujitsu. And so I think getting ready for that, and like if you're preparing for that, if you want to compete in that, you have to cross train like sports. You have to do wrestling. You have to do all this other stuff.
You can't show up to ADCC and not be able to like hold your own on the feet for sure. I mean, that's...
Or at least know how to game the system to like fake a shot and make it look real enough so you can pull guard. Because that's what people be doing.
They out there.
They be doing that.
I got my eyes on you, meows.
They're not who I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay. Name names, girl.
No, I'm not trying to get that beef.
But yeah, I think one of the things you think about with like cross training is like having like this like very well-rounded form of grappling. And I think, takedowns in a lot of ways like get this sort of like machismo aspect to it where it's like, oh, if you don't like do takedowns or have the best takedowns or whatever, it's like some lesser form of grappling, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, like if you pull guard, like then you're, you're a butt scooter. It's like not masculine, which it's like 90% of people in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's like all the no-gi stuff, right?
Yeah, and just like sit to your butt and try and like hump people's legs.
But I also think like,
no.
To me, it's
I
like,
love no-gi. So.
I love the idea of being able to like sit down and like be like, yeah, you can argue with me about takedowns or whatever, but now you can't walk home. And then also the ability to just shoot like a blast double and take somebody down to the mat. And I think that that's what a well-rounded like grappler looks like. But, kind of to my point about like somebody that's like a true master or whatever, it's like if 13 years of training, like every form of grappling arts or whatever, and I feel like there's a lot of techniques where I'm like, I'm still a beginner in that one. It's like, how long do you become like a real master, Like, can you be a master of grappling?
I mean, there's not like, should we just create our own like federation of jujitsu or not jujitsu? It's grappling, and then like,
I don't know.
We're gonna take over.
I feel like if you're watching this podcast and you'd financially support that, then yes, we will.
We're gonna make it grappling now. Just grappling, pure. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, just grappling.
Just grappling.
Just grappling.
All the things. The just grappling.
JGF.
It's too hard. It's too hard to say.
Nah, it's too many j noises.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of how.
I'm like, yeah, we're thinking too hard about it now. Like,
no. I was trying to think what, like a Brazilian accent, how they would pronounce JGF.
Well, I don't know how to. I don't know like the alphabet in Portuguese. So
JGF.
Yeah.
I don't know the alphabet. The same letters, girl.
I know, but they pronounce them. You mean the Come sound. On, the sounds.
I don't know. Some of them might be having like a little extra thing. They're fancy. Which, for such a masculine culture, you get real fancy with the way you dot your I's. I'm just saying.
I don't support the thoughts of Tyler Bishop at this point.
Like some kind of like.
Stop! Just stop. You're gonna go like down a rabbit hole. We don't need to.
Yeah.
So
we've been down enough. But yeah, I think So I think speaking of masters of grappling, like we talked about J-Flow a little bit earlier, but like a guy that's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, black belt judo, collegiate wrestler, like very well rounded in all those different things. Yet, if you wanted to say like, do you want to become like a master, or like, do you want to have like a really great guard in jiu-jitsu? Like, is he the person to teach you guard? Like, probably not. Like, can he show you stuff? But like, yeah. But he's not like the guard instructor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't know what my next thought was there.
I felt like you were measuring your words, but my
No. I was just trying to think of it. It's like, yeah, no, like there's gonna be people that are like the technicians. It's like you're gonna go to a certain person to teach you half guard. You're gonna go to a certain person to teach you. But it's like, why do I train with Justin? Because I want to be really good at my takedowns.
Yeah.
And like my wrestling. And like when you roll with him, it's like it doesn't matter what happens where you're at. Like he's gonna find your arm and he's gonna be able to take you down with ease.
And I think that's the cool thing where it's like you may as a student learn the most from somebody like that because you may be great at takedowns or like that style of grappling. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, oh, everything that he teaches like works really good for me, but but that doesn't mean you still can't get nuances from somebody that's like,
no, you can learn from like, that's what's great is like everybody has something to teach you and to offer you like in their respective like discipline or like specialty. Right. And that's why it's important to cross train and get those things. And then I think a lot of times, especially like with, I don't know how this goes, but I think like just thinking because I've been like training a lot of stuff for like MMA lately, and I think about that. It's like, I don't know, like if you're a young athlete and you're like, I want to be an MMA fighter, do you just say like, I'm going to train all these things now? I think if you focused your time in one of the disciplines, and that being probably a grappling discipline, would probably be more beneficial than just spending all your time striking. I think.
I mean, I agree with that.
I think it's harder to get good at grappling than it would be to get striking. And I don't know that that's true or not. That's my opinion.
I mean, yeah.
That's how I think. Because there's like less moves. There's less options, right? In grappling, there's so many options.
I mean, obviously that changes if you're like, well, what if it's kickboxing match? Like, well, duh. Like, no. Like, if the rules are kickboxing match, then obviously spend your time kickboxing.
Talking about like,
but if it's just MMA, and you're like, which one should I get good at first? It's gonna take you way longer to get good at grappling. So you should definitely start there. And like it's a good head start. Like, you know, if you've just been doing that your whole life, but that's not to take away from the other disciplines, because it's like I feel like a fish out of water sometimes doing like new striking things. Well,
and like
the other day, it's like when you're getting your butt kicked in jiu-jitsu and somebody's just like you don't have an answer for it. It's like it's frustrating and it feels like you're drowning or whatever. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing that makes you panic more than like when you're doing stand-up and somebody's just like lighting you up with like a jab or something. You're like, I need a second.
You can't think.
Like, I just need a second.
When you're you're grappling, you get that opportunity to think. Because
Yeah.
you're like, even if somebody's mounted on you, it's like, okay, like I'm just gonna keep
I'm just gonna stop making it worse.
Stop. Like, this is my home right now, and I'm just good, and like that's it.
Yeah, and then like stand up, you're like, I just need a second. You cover up, and it's like pat, pat,
and then
pat.
it's getting like teed off on.
Like every time you try to think, you're like, how do I keep myself? And it's like bap, and then you're like, but I need to keep my. Bap.
I have a good option. Just run away. Keep running. Run in circles. Try and get away, and then and do this.
Speaking of which, one of my least favorite things in jiu-jitsu is like when you start on the knees and you slap hands and the person like jumps backwards on the knees.
Back.
It's like, am I gonna have to like hunt you down now? You're like, you start to like kind of scoot towards them and then they like jump back again. It's like, well, what are you gonna do? Shoot like a double leg from your knees? Like, we playing no legs jiu-jitsu or something?
Yes, no legs jiu-jitsu, which is what most people do.
That'll be our grappling federation. NLJJ.
No, that's because then it's jiu-jitsu. It's not grappling.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Man, you're not thinking about anything.
I'm not.
You're not thinking anything.
I'm not articulating our mission well.
I need to tell you what the mission is first.
Yeah, we need to get on the same page.
And then you can mark it.
We need to get on the same page because we were trying to get people to financially support this for a little bit. And I feel like right now...
Nobody's supporting anything because you're talking nonsense.
Yeah, I feel like investor confidence is low.
Stop.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the point is like, I think there's benefit in cross-training all martial arts as long as you can like... Your goal is to be able to practice them, to be able to like apply them. But then I think even within training, whatever grappling discipline it is, like
like even just training jiu-jitsu, I think it's important to expose yourself to people outside of just your academy, because if your only exposure is in tournaments, like that's going to be like kind of like a hard thing to deal with. But if your exposure is like, I'm going to go, it's like for sure you're training the majority of your time at your home base because that's your family, that's your team, that's your your source is probably where you're paying. But like it's good like if there's open mats or if you're traveling to go experience other academies, or like we always have people from different academies come and train with us. Like we'll have days where we're like, oh, this school's coming to train, and we invite them in, and it's awesome to get that exposure to just different people because it's just so different. Like when you're used to just everybody has like a very similar style when you train at one academy because you're learning, the professor's style usually. And then, or like all your training partners know what you do. So like they know how to defend your best stuff really well because they've had practice doing it.
Or they're all good
daily,
at the same things.
Or they're very good at the same thing. Yeah. So it's like when you train with somebody different, it's like, oh, like my A game like works really well. Like I don't have to go to option.
That's my favorite thing about like
off of this thing is because like my first stuff people aren't expecting, And so I think it's really good. Or you get exposed to something new that you haven't seen before in the academy, and you're like, wait, what was that? Like I need to be worried about that. Like it gives you.
You can hook a heel. But yeah,
practice heel hooks.
I think that's the thing that makes like cross training so good is like the ability to be able to, I would equate it to being like even if you went to a restaurant and you found that it was like the best restaurant, like we have places we love to go. Like that doesn't mean I don't want to go other places and try other food.
Yeah.
Like even if it's the same style. Because the truth is like you can appreciate and enjoy things like from other places, and that doesn't mean like it takes away from the fact that this other place.
Like this one's my favorite, but like I also want to see if like what else is out there.
But even when it relates to learning and stuff like that, I think it just like broadens your horizons a whole bunch. And I think it used to be where places like thought of it as like information security. Like they didn't want you to go over there and show the people stuff, and they had their own stuff. It's like the internet, like.
That's all gone. Those days are gone.
If that professor doesn't have like his own online instructionals or something like that, then for sure the association that he belongs to does, or somebody inside that association does. So it's not like there's any secrets that are being passed other places, and so I think that's a trap to fall into. That's like I don't know, rooted in something else. That's like doesn't have much efficacy anymore either.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Don't get caught up in that trap. So, it's silly.
So yeah, I mean, if you're out there and you're like, I want to be a better grappler, you should probably try to take every opportunity you can to train any form of grappling with anybody that has anything that you can teach or any place you can go and like get some rounds in and see how you do.
Yeah. Yeah, take those opportunities. It's really important. And I mean, to learn, to grow. And then, we always said like, and our professor coming up would always tell us like, if you're on vacation, like take your gi, go train with other people. And I know we've said this before, but then you bring that information back to your academy and you share it with your training partners, with your friends. You show your professor like, hey, like this person was doing this, and like maybe they can help you like figure out how to do it and or defend it, or maybe you expose them to something kind of new, which is always awesome. Like
inverted wrist locks. It's a thing. It's coming back.
It's coming back.
Yeah, make wrist locks great again.
I mean, I'm pro wrist lock at any point. We all know this. If you know me, you know I'm pro wrist lock.
The Bishops are a pro wrist lock family.
Yeah. Also,
what would you
say
to
friend
somebody?
Moose.
Yeah, he's big into wrist locks.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that's anti wrist lock?
I mean, why?
I guess.
Are you afraid, homie?
Keep your wrist safe. What about people that say that they're dirty?
No, it's not dirty.
Would you rather your arm hurt? Like your elbow?
I mean, I can break your elbow or I can just make your wrist hurt a little bit.
Having like a jacked up wrist, I mean, we've all had it.
Yeah.
If you've been wrist locked hard enough. And you know what? Having a jacked up wrist kind of sucks, but that's it. It just kind of sucks. When you get your arm jacked or your knee jacked or your ankle jacked,
it affects every aspect of your life. It
kind of sucks.
You know what the worst thing about having your wrist hurt is? Having to use the restroom. I remember my wrist hurt and I'm like, I had to use my other hand to wipe. True story.
You've been wrist locked.
Sorry, TMI, but that was because Megaton wrist locked me real hard and I didn't tap. And he tried to do it a lot.
A lot of really interesting information there on that. So we'll leave it there. We'll leave it at Megaton wrist locking Jena Bishop and making her need to wipe with her offhand.
Gotta be.
So
use both hands.
It improved your game. You became ambidextrous.
It does.
So yeah, we want to thank everybody for listening to the podcast. If you have a chance, wherever you're listening, leave a review if that's a thing. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already, just to make sure people know that you're supporting. And share it with your childhood best friend. Share it with your mom's estranged brother. Like, share it with those people too, because I'm sure they would enjoy it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching or listening.
Bye.